All right, here we are in the dungeon adventure game that you had in your open class assignment. This one was pretty tricky, and I know a lot of people did struggle, and most of you haven't finished it yet. So I wanted to go ahead and post this tutorial video here just so you can see one way to go about it. Again, there are lots of right ways to do this, and if it works, there's no wrong way as long as it works, right? So I'm just going to show you how I would do it if I were just approaching this for the very first time. And just you can watch, you can follow along if you haven't done this already, and then you'll have code that you can turn in, but hopefully it can kind of help understand. So we take a look at this, and it tells us a little bit like what are we going to use? We're going to use variables, operators, lists, dictionaries, loops, conditionals, and the random module. So if I saw this, I know that we're going to use the random module. That tells me something, and I didn't put it in these instructions, but that means we're going to need to we're going to import random, right? I'm going to go ahead and do that here. We're going to import that. And then if I hadn't used that before, I would search for it. So I have that pulled up here, and all I did was just search for random, and it gives me the Python documentation for random. It tells me all the different methods that there are. So you can scroll through and take a look at these, right? Reading through, I was able to think, okay, well, there's random choice. That gives me an element from a non-empty sequence, right? Random choices gives me more than one. There's shuffle, sample, random.random, random.uniform, right? There's a lot of really good options. Random.int can just even give you a random number. Where did that go? Here we go. Random int gives you a random integer. So a lot of these we know that we could use. We're just going to kind of keep that in the back of our mind. I know we've seen, I believe so far in this course, random int and random choice. So I'll go back. All right. We've imported the random module. We know we'll need to use that later. Step 1, player setup. So we're going to prompt the player for their name. First, we'll just go ahead, I'm just going to print like a little greeting here. Say, hello adventurer, welcome to the dungeon, whatever you want to write, I don't know. Okay, so if we're going to allow the user, like the player, to input their name, and then we're going to save it into a variable, so we'll call it player name equals, right? Player name equals, it's an input, right? If you ever forget what that's called, just think about like you're inputting the answer. Inside the input parentheses, that is whatever is displayed to someone before they're typing. So we would say, what is your name? Right? You can write whatever you want in these. I'm going to keep it pretty simple here. So this, what is your name, that will show up in a Jupyter Notebook file. It pops up here. If you were in a .py file, just like a Python code file, it would be in the terminal, right, where things run. Okay, so we're going to prompt the user for their name. And then maybe have a little message that says, welcome, player name. Maybe we'll say, good luck. Okay. And then we're going to set health to 10. So health will be another new variable. We set equal to 10. So that's an integer, meaning we can do math on that. We can take away health or add health. And we're going to create an empty list to store the inventory. I'm just going to call this inventory. And an empty list, you just simply put the brackets right next to each other, the open, close, back to back. And you have to set this empty list first, because if throughout the game you want to add items to it, you'll use the list method append, but you can't use append on something that doesn't exist yet, right? It has to exist as a list, even if it doesn't hold anything. So we're setting that there, and we can go ahead and test some of this out just to make sure, you don't have to do these little tests, but it's helpful. You could just print player name, health, inventory, and just make sure that it works. So let's try running it. What is your name? I'm going to put Eileen. Okay, so then it prints out. Welcome Eileen, good luck. Has my name, my health, and the inventory. Awesome. You can go ahead and get rid of those. And we'll go to the next step. Create a dictionary of treasures where the keys are treasure names and the values are the gold values of each treasure. Okay, so I'm going to call the dictionary something. It can be any name we want. I'm going to call it treasures. And remember, for dictionaries, you have the curly braces, and inside of that, you have key value pairs. The keys and the values are connected with a colon, and the pairs are separated with a comma. So we can come up with some treasure names. Let's say gold necklace, right? So after that's a string, we put a colon. And if we want to do a value in gold and we want to add, add these together, say sum at the end, or do any kind of math on it, it needs to be numbers. So we're just going to call it, let's say 500. And then we can just come up with, anything else. We'll say a basket of coconuts. Sure, why not? Maybe that's worth 25 gold. Separate it with a comma. We could do okay, flowers. Why not? That's probably, we'll say that's worth 40. And magical sword. We'll try that. Say that's worth 420. And then maybe we'll add one more. You can do as many or as few as you want, as long as you have at least a couple. And again, I'm just being silly here. Call it a pack of gum. It doesn't matter what you put here. Do what you will with it. We'll say that's worth 10. Okay, so the last one doesn't have a comma. It's just commas separating these. And you'll see again with the formatting, you can go inside these curly braces and then just have them separated on lines so that it's easier to read, right? These spaces aren't going to matter inside of here. You also could just put it all in one big line. It would be the same difference, right? But this is a lot easier to read, right? So if we want to check this, we could just print it out here at the bottom, right? So we'll run that. It prints that out. Awesome. Okay. And just to think about dictionary stuff to play with that, if you're ever unsure, you could do the type, right? Type of treasures, make sure, is it a dictionary? Yes, it is. Awesome. So what if, we just wanted to look at certain things like treasures.keys, right? What would that look like? Let's run it. That gives us something, it looks like this, dict keys. And it's kind of like a list, but not quite, right? So what is that? Is it just called dict key? The dictionary keys, dictionary list, what is it? That's what it's called. So that object type is dict keys, right? If you ever want to change the type of something, so say you wanted to have a list of what treasures are there, you could just do list, right? So if we ran that, then you get all of your treasure items in a list, right? And maybe we'll just go ahead and even do that. Let's just say treasure list equals list of treasure keys, right? And we can even we'll save it in that variable, right? But yeah, you could do, if you were looking at other things, you could look at the values as well, right? And that's going to give you a similar thing, all the numbers. It's not super helpful. I don't know that we would ever need to access just the numbers, but just playing around with dictionaries, right? It's important to do things, when you're coding. You don't have to stay perfectly on topic in an exercise like this. You can just have a dictionary and have it remind you oh yeah, what else can I do with this? What does treasures.items give me? It's a dict items object, right? And it's even weirder than the others, right? You have the dict items itself is a list of a bunch of tuples, right? And the tuples are values and the keys. So it's important to know kind of what things look like, what the types of things are, right? Okay. So we made the treasures, we saved treasure list. All right, we'll just go ahead and put that. So this is the main game loop here, right? It's a lot of nesting, so we're just going to try to make a skeleton and fill it in. That's how I would do it, at least. So it gives you a hint, use a for loop to represent rooms 1 to 5, right? So we know we have for, room is what I'm going to call it. And again, this word room, it's just a variable. You can make this whatever you want. It could be I, X, num, space, you know, whatever, any word. It's better to be descriptive, in my opinion. So it's like a best practice to use things that make sense for what you're doing. And since these are rooms, I'm going to call it for room in, and I'm going to use a range here. So recall with range, the default is that it starts at 0, and then the number that's either the only number or the second number is not inclusive. So if I were to put 5 here, it would print 0, it would go through 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And I want the rooms 1 to 5. So what I'm going to do is start with 1 instead of 0. Instead of ending at 4, I want to end at 5. So I've got to move this up because this will not include the number 6. This will iterate through the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right? Okay. So inside of this, we know that we want to display the current room number and these options. Okay? So we can go ahead and say, we'll make a print statement. Say you are now in room and room, right? Because this is the variable here. This room is just holding a number, right? So the first time it'll be you are now in room 1, and then it'll go to 2, 3, 4, 5, right? You are now in room 1. And we say, what would you like to do? And then if you can just go ahead and I'm going to make a new print statement because that's easy here. And I'm going to copy and paste this, all of this, right? So I'm going to put it in quotes, and we'll have to format it a little bit, but this will still just save us a little bit of time. So first of all, got to get rid of these little hashtags. And what I'm going to do when I back up into the, see how they're right back to back? I can add a new line inside of a print statement by doing a backslash and an N. Okay? And that will just go to a new line. So I don't want spaces there. I just want a new line. So we can do that. And for me, that's the easiest way to do that. There's other ways you can format some strings, but this works, right? So for every time you go to a room, it's going to print these two things, right? And we can test this. We'll test this now, and what we'll expect is to see this printed 5 times. So let's go ahead and give it a try. And it works, right? You're now in room 1. What would you like to do? Do one of these things. You're now in room 2, right? So perfect. We know that that for loop works. That's awesome. And obviously, we want someone to be able to make a choice. So I'm going to call it player choice. And that is going to, again, we need to have an input from the player. They're going to tell us what their choice is, right? Input, and then whatever we, display. And I'm going to say, choose a number 1 through 5, just to indicate that they are going to type in a number. But here's something, important. When they put in this input and they're typing in a number, we need to think about that. It looks like a number, but what is the type of that, right? So I'm going to print the type of player choice, just so we can look at that. All right, we're going to test this out real quick. We're going to run it. So choose a number 1 through 5. I'm going to press 1. Okay. Does it just not? Okay. So sometimes it gets a little delayed. You saw how it didn't want to print the answer until I chose the next room. That's one reason why a Jupyter Notebook, in hindsight, isn't the best option for this. But as we can see, right, it did print the type of our selections. They're strings, right? It looks like a 1, but it is a string. Okay, so I'm exiting out from here. And we have different options. That means that when we do our if-else statements, we can either compare them to strings, or we could just make the input an integer, which is pretty useful. There's a lot of times you might need someone to type in a number that you're going to do math with, right? So you use int for int, and then parentheses, and then whatever goes inside the parentheses is converted into an integer, right? So they're going to type in a number, and now it will be an integer. So if we were to run this again, right, we're going to choose a number, and hopefully maybe it'll print out faster this time. It did, yeah. Now it's no longer a string, it's an integer. So that's awesome. Let's go ahead and X out of there. Oops, while I quit the game, it was angry about how I did that. Let's clear these outputs. Okay, right? We don't need to leave that in there, but we do know that we have now a player choice, which is an integer 1 through 5. It says make sure to handle each option appropriately. So this is kind of telling us that like inside of this for loop, we are going to have if statements, if else statements, right? So I'm just kind of going to build out a skeleton. So we have if player choice equals 1, right? Then we're going to search for treasure. If player choice equals 2, we're going to move to the next room. Oh, I did make a mistake. Hold on. I started typing just, semantically, but this should be an elif statement. So else if player choice equals 2, move to the next room. Else if player choice equals 3, because remember with an if else, like you can have one if, and then if you were to put another if, then it would just keep, it's like starting all over, it's not connected. All right, so elif player choice equals 3, we're going to display health and inventory, right? Elif player choice equals 4, we are going to quit the game. Right? Okay. Right? Right now I'm just going to put some break statements in just so we can, have something inside here too. Test out. Okay. And then there's one final else, and that's if they don't type in any of the numbers 1 through 4. And that sort of captures everything else. We can print invalid choice. Type in number 1 through 5. Right? Okay. So this is sort of like the first part here, right? And we can kind of run this just to see what happens at this state. It's not going to be a lot, right? But choose number 1 through 5. So I'm going to choose 1. We're going to search for treasure. Obviously, it's not doing anything but breaking at this point. So it just, when I hit any of these numbers, it just pops me out. Pops me out of this for loop for right now. And that's fine, just for right now, right? So we're going to implement the treasure search. If the player chooses to search, randomly decide if they find a treasure or a trap. If the treasure, randomly pick from the treasure dictionary and add it to the inventory. And if it's a trap, deduct 2 health points. So we know in here then, we're going to have an if-else statement. So if, the outcome of a random choice is treasure, right? So I'm going to make a new variable. I think that's easier just to kind of keep things less complicated. I'm going to call it outcome. So outcome has to be a random choice of either treasure or trap. There's different ways you can do that, right? You could have created a random int like for 0 or 1, right? You could have done it like above or below a certain range of numbers. I'm going to go ahead and use the random choice and just make a list with my 2 options that I want to include. So I'm going to use random.choice. I'm going to put a list in, and it's going to be treasure or trap. So in that moment, I could have gone to here, could look at random choice, right? Turns a random element from a non-empty sequence. A list is a sequence. And I can scroll down to see too, like, are there options, like, is there an example, right? Looking for, so here's choices, right? Trying to see if there's one that uses random choice in here. Well, I guess this one was not a good example, but you could say, okay, go to W3 schools. Right, input random my list, print random choice my list, right? And we know that it's going to print one of these, right? All right, go back to our code. Alrighty. So we have the outcome, and we have different options then. So if outcome equals treasure, And then else, we could do L if outcome equals trap, right? We've got these two things, right? You're going to do one of these two things. So if A equals treasure, then it's telling us, it said, you know, add a random treasure to inventory, right? Okay, so first we have to figure out, again, what is that random treasure going to be? So I'm going to call it found treasure, and I'm going to do a random choice, right? And we know that we want it from one of the treasure items, but can we do a random choice with the dictionary, right? That's what I would have tried first, right? Treasure. In fact, probably instead of typing it in here, I would even just scroll up here, right? I would be like, okay, can I do that? I've got treasure list there, but can I do random dot choice treasures? What does that look like? And I cannot. I can't choose from an empty sequence. It's not the right form, right? But I know that it works with a list because I just did it with my treasure and trap. So what about with treasure list? Can I use it there? Yes, it gives me something random from my treasure list, right? So I'm going to copy, I'm going to take that code out. I'm going to put it in here. Found treasure equals random.choice treasure list, right? And all that list was just a list of the treasure keys. Okay, so it's going to give me just one of those things, and it's going to add it to my inventory. Okay, and then I should print something to let people know, you know, or actually I should append my inventory first. So inventory, right? That was the empty list that we made. Dot append, and then we'll put in found treasure. Okay, and then we can print to let them know. You say you found whatever the found treasure is that's worth, and if we want to show the value of it inside of the curly braces, we can access the value of the treasure dictionary just using the found treasure as the key. So it would be treasures, and then inside the brackets, found treasure, and that will have the value. Okay, so else, that means that it was a trap. So that means we're going to subtract 2 points from the health. So health, that was our variable that we originally set to 10. And you can do minus equal 2. And that's the exact same thing as if you were to write health equals health minus 2, right? That's the same thing. You could do either one. Minus equal is just a little bit, you know, simpler looking and nice. And then you could print something that says, you know, you fell into a trap and lost 2 health points. Your health is now, and then we'll give health, right? More exclamation points, why not? Okay. All right, so now we can try this. Let's go ahead and just try it before we continue. So it printed this out. Let's search for treasure, see what it does. 1. We found a basket of coconuts worth 25. Oh, awesome. I might write gold under there. 25 gold. Okay. And then let's run it again. So now, search for treasure. Let's try. Ah, you fell into a trap and lost 2 health points. Your health is now 8. Okay. And remember, right now, I have these breaks in here, you know, so that we don't have to, while we're testing, it's not going to like keep printing these out. We're just trying to test one at a time for now. Okay. So we have that. We've got that treasure search, right? So player choice equals 2, you're going to move to the next room. So pretty much you can just print, you move to the next room, right? It's really all you have to do. We can test it out though, just to see. So it's going to print it out. Press 2, it says you move to the next room, right? And normally it would then go to the next room, but we have these breaks in here for now, just while we're testing, right? So the next one is we want to show the health and inventory, right? So we can just use this in print statements. We have all the variables already saved. So we can say, now you have, let's see, how do we want to, maybe we could say, instead of that, say like, your current health is health, and then maybe do like a new line and say your current inventory is, and then just put the inventory. And right now it's you know, that'll be in a list form, of course, but I think that's okay for now. So let's go ahead and just run that and see what it looks like. So now we're going to choose the number 3. Health is 8. Your current inventory is basket of coconuts. So what if I didn't want it to be a list like this? What if I wanted it to just look like a list, right? There's a really great function that's called join, right? So, and you can write it right in here if you want, or we can make a new variable, but I'm just going to write it here for now. So first, you're going to put what you're joining the items of a list with. So I'm going to this, I don't know if this is gonna, actually I might have to use single quotes for this to work. Single quotes, and inside a space, dot, join, inventory. Okay, so this is saying, take a list and turn it into strings, like we're gonna put everything together, right? And we're gonna separate it with something, and this is the separator. So let's run this real quick so you can see what I'm talking about. We chose 3. Now it says your current inventory is basket of coconuts. So we could put anything in here, right? If we had, like, we could put, you know, a bunch of symbols and run it. Oh, but we only have one item right now, so that doesn't help. But if we, let's say, let's just go ahead and make, I'm just going to put, well, we're just going to run this again to try to add to the inventory real quick. So let's see if we can get another treasure in there. Okay, cool. So now we added the bouquet of flowers there. So now if we run this and choose 3, you'll see the separator. Ah, so ugly, right? But what we want really is a comma and a space, right? Basket of coconuts, bouquet of flowers, right? Awesome. So that one works. And then if the player choice equals 4, you're quitting the game. So we're definitely, in the very least, we're going to print, you went away, coward, you know, whatever you want to put, right? So we can test that out like we're testing everything else out. So you choose 4, you run away. Okay, cool. Awesome. Okay, so let's see what happens if we take these breaks out. Actually, I'm even just gonna leave them. I'm gonna comment them out for right now. Okay. So let's comment out the breaks and let's just see kind of what this looks like. Let's run it. Okay, you're in room 1. What would you like to do? Let's search for treasure. Sure. Okay. Found a pack of gum worth 10, and it automatically moves you to the next room, even though you didn't choose to go to the next room. It moved you there anyway after you search. You can only search for treasure once. We'll try going to the next room. All right, you move to the next room. You're in 3. What would you like to do? Now let's check our health and inventory. Yeah, your current inventory is basket of coconuts, pack of gum. Your current health is 8. But even after that, it automatically moved us to room 4. All right, let's look for one more treasure. Right? You fell into a trap. Your health is 6. You're now in room 5. What would you like to do? We have one more option. It seems like it's moving us through every time, no matter what. Let's just get more treasure, okay? You fell into a trap and lost 2 health points. Your health is now 4. And then it ends, right? So as you can see, as it stands right now, even though you have an option for checking inventory and for moving to the next room, because it's just in this for loop here, it's going to just move through every time, right? So we know that all of this works, and that part's awesome. But we got to think, like, in that case, what if we don't want it to just automatically go to the next room, right? What if we want to be able to search for treasure as much as we want? And that's when you would use a while loop, okay? So underneath here, you can say while true, which means unless you break out of it or do make something false, right? Like you can take all of this. When you highlight it in VS Code and press tab, it tabs everything over, right? So while true. So that means that while true, it's going to print this, right? And the reason I commented out the breaks is that you want to break from some of these, right? You don't want to break on here, the player choice, because you want them to be able to just keep choosing treasure as much as they want over and over and over, if that's what they want to do, okay? right? But if player choice equals 2, you want to move to the next room, which means you want to go to this outer loop, right? You got to think you've got this inner while loop and this outer room loop. So if you want to break out of this while loop and allow it to move to the next room, then you have to use a break. So we'll bring this break back. Okay? And then if player choice equals 3, you want to display a health and inventory, but you don't want to break out of this while loop. You want it just to keep going because you don't want to move to the next room. So that one we know we won't need. Okay? If player choice equals 4, you want to quit the game. So you definitely want to break out. You don't want it to keep offering, so you're going to break there. Okay? And then this one, if you have print invalid choice type of number 1 through 5, you don't want that to move you to the next room. You definitely want it just to print this again. Okay? Let's go ahead and test this out. We're now in room 1. What would you like to do? Let's search for treasure first. Oh no, we fell into a trap. Our health is now 2 because we never reset our health. We're in room 1 still. So let's try moving to the next room. So that works. You move to the next room, and then yeah, you can search for treasure as much as you want. I'm actually going to check health and inventory because we might die soon. Okay, because our current health is 2. We got some coconuts, flowers, pack of gum. All right. You're now in room 2. What would you like to do? Let's go ahead and just search for treasure again. Oh no, our health is now 0. But look, it's still moving us. It's still keeping us in the room even though we have a health of 0. It's letting us play still. See? We can just keep playing no matter what until we just quit the game, say, right? Let's just quit. But look, we quit the game. It didn't let us quit the game. It printed this, but it didn't break out of the outer for loop, right? It's still just forcing us through all these rooms right now. We'd have to go all the way through and then we're gone, right? So let's go back up and take a look at what's going on. Alrighty, so this is true, right? So, but maybe we want to think about like, it's still showing rooms sometimes when we don't want rooms. So what's the first thing we notice? We don't want it to show you rooms if you're dead, right? So we can add an if statement before this while loop that says if health is less than or equal to 0, print something, say, you know, you died, game over, right? And then you'll break out of that for loop. So this breaks the outer loop, which is kind of like the gameplay loop. That will break it if you're dead. It won't go into this while everything, you know, it's done, right? That will break you out. But then there's another one. So say, you know, say that they did choose to quit the game, right? Then you would want something else, right? So think about, remember it's going in order. For every room, it's checking the health, it's doing this while loop, right? Until something breaks it. If you choose player choice equals 4, that will break here and it will continue down this for loop. So you can add another one here. If player choice equals 4, you know, then you can just break. And that's going to break your outer loop too. So that it'll just say, you run away, coward, and then it's not going to go to the next room. Right? Let's give it a try. See if that helped us. Let's reset our health and inventory real quick. Right, that's our treasure list. And let's run this. Okay, so let's search for treasure. Awesome. And we'll see we got some gum, but we're still in room 1. All right, so let's move to the next room. Okay, now we're in room 2. We can search for treasure as much as we want. We can check our inventory, right? But we're all still in room 2. If we want to keep moving through the rooms, we can. Room 3, room 4. And we can also quit the game, right? And now it's done, right? Kind of want to run it again just so you can see what happens if your health drops to 0 or below, just to see. And I really encourage you, like when you're doing your own code things, like you got to just play around like this. I'm going to go ahead and do 1. Let's just keep searching for treasure until we die. We're having a lot of really good luck. So our current health is 4. Okay, we can do a scrollable element. Our health is 2. Oh no! It's -2. Oh no, look at this. It didn't work. Right? You fell into a trap and lost 2 health points, and your health is now -2. So why is that? What happened? Why is it letting us have negative points? We have to go back up and figure out like what we missed here. Okay? So if health is less than or equal to 0, you died, game over. Right? Health minus equal 2. Right? So this is the thing. We have to add another one here. If health is less than or equal to 0, we need to break it here too, because that breaks us out of the inner loop and back into the outer loop, right? So let's reset our health to 10 here. Oh, actually we've got to interrupt. Okay, so let's clear all outputs. Let's just run it all. Let's just test it all together. So what's your name? Okay, so that all works. And this is showing us our options, right? So we restarted it, right? So if we checked health and inventory, you know, we've got 10 health, we don't have anything in the inventory. So let's try again. Let's just try searching for treasure until we die. Wow, we're getting really good luck here. Good grief. Okay, we lost 2 health points, lost 2 health points, lost 2 health points. Oh dear. Our health is now 0. You died, game over. And it quit, right? So that's all it needed. What was happening before is that there was no break if you got to 0 inside the while loop. So it just kept going through this while loop. Even though we had it here, we didn't have it here, right? And you need it in both of the places because you could exit out of just this one, but then it would still just keep going to a new room, right? And it would let you choose the other things even if you didn't have any health. So as of right now, this works pretty well. That's awesome. You know, health drops to 0 or below. Renegade more message and break the loop. We did that. The trap, we deducted 2 health points. Treasure, we got the random treasure. Everything as of now, it's working, right? We're iterating through the rooms using a for loop. We're making sure that they're not dead. And we're allowing them to stay in the room as long as they want, right? And it only breaks to the next room if they are dead, or if they choose to either quit or go to the next room, right? And then we had a couple extra, you know, these are the extra breaks in the outer loop too, in case they just want to quit, all the way quit. Awesome. So the last thing we want to do is we have the end of game summary. If the player quits or finishes all the rooms, calculate the total value of the collected treasures. So let's think about this for now. Let's see, what do we have? That means like we know we have inventory, right? Gold necklace, basket of coconuts, bouquet of flowers, gold necklace. Okay. So let's just call it inventory value equals. We'll start with 0 because we're going to use a for loop to iterate here, right? So it's 0. So for item in inventory, right? Inventory value plus equals, and you want the value of it, right? But the value is not in this inventory list. It's in the dictionary that the inventories are coming from. And that dictionary was called treasures. And then you access the value by putting the key inside the bracket. And the key in this case is the item, right? So now we are going to take a look. It works. We have 1,065, right? But there's something else that I want to think about, right? So we know that that works. That gives us our inventory value. That's awesome. So if we wanted to say print, you know, game is over, adventurer, you have ended with, and then we'll just, we'll say health of health and inventory of inventory and maybe inventory valuing. We'll do inventory value gold. All right, so let's just try printing this out real quick. So game is over, adventure. You've ended with health of 0, so we died. Inventory of this, valuing gold. So we got the value, but this is ugly, right? I don't like this. We know we learned that join, right? We could join things, but it repeats things. Like, I don't know that I need to see gold necklace written twice or whatever we end up getting multiple times. There's something that we can do to change this list into only showing the unique items, and that is making it into a set. A set is like a list, except that everything is unique, like it's distinct, right? You can't have repeating values in that. And you can change something to a set the same way that we change something to a list in a very similar way. So check this out. We can go to, say we have inventory, we'll call it inventory set equals set of inventory, okay? Right? So we'll start there. So we'll change this to inventory set. We'll see what that looks like. So now it's in set formation, which has curly braces, right? Instead of brackets, that's how you know it's a set. But it still is kind of like, meh, not great looking. Right? So, but can we use the join? Can we use join on a set of inventory? Let's find out, right? Let's say we're just going to call it overall inventory equals, let's try this dot join inventory set. Let's just see if it works. Does it work? No, it doesn't work. Oh wait, no, we didn't change it. Hold on. Right. What did we call it? We called it overall inventory. Let's see. There we go. It did work. Awesome. Right? So it's fun to experiment and try things. So that works. The join works not only with a list, but also with the set. Right? So inventory of gold necklace, bouquet of flowers, basket of coconuts, which is awesome. And this is a, you know, pretty bare bones. You can add a lot to this. I know I saw some people have some cool stuff where they changed, you know, adding in different words to say like a gold necklace, a basket of coconuts, or, you know, adding ands, adding punctuation. Like there's a lot that you can do. But this meets all the requirements, right? So just for fun, we'll just kind of like roll through this real quick. I'm going to clear all the outputs and we're going to run them all. So first we imported the random library. And we knew that we were going to use that. We just went ahead and imported in the beginning. We knew that if we wanted to use any of the functions that it contains, we have to import it at the top first. And you'll probably see in week 3, this was a week 2 assignment. You know, I wouldn't have taken off points for you putting this anywhere, it's fine. But you learn in week 3 the Python sort of order and setup best practices, and you'll see that in a notebook you always want to put all your library imports at the top, the very first code cell. Okay, so now we have our player set up, and I'm just going to say Koji student. Welcome Koji student, good luck. And you know, we only use player name here, so maybe we should add it to the bottom later. We'll take a look at that. So we have a treasure dictionary. We made a dictionary of treasures. Right, you can see the format, and then we also saved it in a list format of just the items in case we just want to choose from these, which we ended up needing to do. We got that just from playing around. And we've got our game loop. So we're iterating through all the rooms 1 through 5. To be able to do anything, we have to make sure you're not dead. And then inside of each of these rooms, this will keep going forever unless you break out of it. Right, so you can search for treasure forever. It only breaks out if you die. You can move to the next room, so that'll break you out to the next room. Right? You can display your health and inventory forever, and you can quit the game, or you can put in something invalid, and then it will just continue to print this out. Right? And then also, if you happen to want to quit the whole game, you're going to break out of the for loop here. So we'll play. Oh, it's going to be slow on this one. doesn't want to give us our output. That's okay. It'll show it once we just choose, and we'll just choose to search for treasure first. Okay, we were in room 1. Oh no, we already lost points. Let's get more treasure. We got 500 gold. I'm just going to get all the treasure until dying. I'm just going to run through there just for fun. Wow, we've gotten a lot of treasure. This should be fun to see our ending summary. Okay, we finally died. Game over. So now we can see, okay, how do we do here? What do we get? Game is over. And let's actually, instead of saying adventurer, let's do player name. Because why else did we get that, right? Game is over. Koji student, you've ended with a health of 0. Yes, we died. Inventory of gold necklace, bouquet of flowers. We've got pretty much everything. We got a whole bunch of them. Not much gold. So that's it. I hope that this helped you guys sort of understand and see kind of how I would go through it. Like, you don't necessarily have to all, like, from the beginning plan it out like this. You saw how first we did like the most basic if-else statements, and that just moved us through the room. We checked just one thing at a time, and then we put it together so that you could stay in the rooms longer, right? Sometimes if you get like too big of a picture idea or too little of a picture idea, it can kind of mess you up. You got to just break it into manageable chunks that you can build on later. So we got like a big overall picture, but we didn't worry too much about the fact that we knew that we would want a while loop at some point. You know, we could add it in later. So yeah, so feel free to save this. You can follow along. You can submit this. If your code looks just like this, that's totally fine. At least then I'll know you followed along and hopefully understand it really well. And use this Slack post, the comments on here, to talk about it, ask questions, compare other things you did. And yeah, I hope this was helpful for you.